running for about 18 months. And we just felt there was a real need to bring together people that had experience and knowledge in knowledge management and community management. And apart from the big conferences, there wasn't an easy way to connect with people. So we just felt we'd do something really informal, really as friendly as if we're sitting in a room together. And we've created, we've done 11 webinars now, and they're all available on YouTube. And so you can listen back to any of the previous topics. We've had 8 meetups in London, just in a pub, and it's inspired other meetups in the Northeast. From looking from the attendees today, it looks like we should be holding something in Scotland. So feel free to use this network to reach out to any of the peers and set something up yourself. We've got about 500 peers connected over the last 18 months, and the LinkedIn group has got about 230. So thanks for your support, and as you continue to support us, we will continue to support you. These are some of the topics from the previous webinars: building community engagement, knowledge retention for community managers, applying SOS systems to knowledge management, all sorts of topics. So they're all available to you on the YouTube channel to listen again or ask questions in the LinkedIn group. Our next meetup is on Wednesday, the 3rd of July, and we'll be scheduling more webinars in the autumn. And we're going to team up with CMX London, because they've got a great venue, and we're going to be supporting them on their events in the autumn as well. We will share all the events with you through the LinkedIn group first. That's the way to sort of find out what's coming up next. And we really welcome your feedback, ideas, volunteering for topics or anything like that, because as I say, it's really, really informal, but just bringing people together who are interested in into these topics. So I hope everyone's sitting comfortably, and I'd like now to find out a bit more about who's on the phone. I've got a slide here about resources, John, but I think I'll come to that after we've gone through the today's webinar. I'm going to start with the poll first. So what we like to do, you know, we're sitting in all different parts of alone, and we want to find out who's on the call with us. So I've launched a poll, and hopefully you can all see the questions on there. It's: how long have you been working either in knowledge management or community management? Could you vote now and share how long you've been working, so we can get a feel for who's in there. Is that working? I can't see any votes coming in.
I can see it, Nancy. So
are you seeing people vote?
Yep. It says introductions in progress, and I can see 18 out of 24 have already voted. No, 19. So I'm happy to read it out if you'd like.
I'll end the poll and share, but if not, then I think, yeah, because mine has just frozen. It just says 0 people have.
I will take a picture just in case.
So it's how long, just to get a feel for who's on the call. And then, have you ever practiced or experienced conversational leadership before? We really wanted to know who had had any experience in this area before. I can see that Sarah can't see the poll. Let me try. Can people see the results? Ah, yes. I can see the results now. Hopefully everyone else can as well.
Yeah, and sometimes the poll doesn't show if you're accessing it just via the web version rather than the app version.
Okay.
So that's sometimes an issue with just the web version of the Zoom system.
So let me share the results with everyone, especially for Sarah. So the majority on the call have had less than 2 years experience, a few between 2 and 10 years, and then the second very close was over 10 years. So a real balance on the call today, which is interesting. And then, have you ever experienced or practiced conversational leadership before? A staggering majority, no. So that's fantastic. You're in good company, and we're all going to experience that together now. I've got some further resources to share with you, but I'll come back to that at the end, John, if that's okay, and hand over to you.
Right.
I'm going to make you host. So I met John back in, I think 2007, 2008 at an APQC conference. He was running a breakout group, and, you know, he's a great supporter of all of these connections. He even runs a local KM leadership group, which I have been part of. So I'm pleased that he could spare some time and share what he's doing now on conversational leadership. So over to you, John.
Great, thank you, Nancy, and thanks everyone for joining in. Can I do a really quick screen and audio? Can you see my screen okay and hear me okay?
Good.
All right, sounds good. So let's dive right in. So yeah, I'll do this because it is going to be quite a bit of content. So I'll try to move quickly through it, and then, like Nancy said, give us time to pause and then have conversation and practice it. So I personally happen to be a believer of Peter Block's comment about connection before content. And if I understand it correctly, I think it means have a bit of a personal touch before getting into, you know, what you're going to talk about. And then I also happen to be a fan of a similar but different quote by Dr. John Carter, who says, "We connect through our similarities, but we make contact through our differences." So there's something about connection and how that might be different, or maybe contact is deeper than connection. So in a relatively vulnerable way, what I might say is I am a Caucasian male, born in the United States, but frankly a little bit internationally lost, having lived in the UK the past 3.5 years, give or take. In fact, we're very excited to be heading back to the UK for most of June and July this year. So I have a wife and 2 daughters, and yeah, we'll be back in country where it looks like most of you are located. So that's a little bit about me, and hopefully more will come out as we you know, go through this. But the idea for today, the topic is conversational leadership, and a tagline for that might be leading a conversational approach to life. So what does that mean, and how are we going to do that? I think what we'll try to do, depending on timing, and I'm going to start a little reminder here for myself right now, I will try and stick to 15 minutes or less. My timer is for 14.5 minutes. So it'll be a little bit quicker than most webinars, where I'll just offer a taste of conversational leadership. But if you're familiar with that old 70-20-10 model, which I think has been debunked, but people still believe in, or there's still some thought around, the way we learn is through formal learning, 10%, through social learning, 20%, and through on the job or through doing something or practicing something, 70%. So let's practice that. I'll offer a little bit, and then we'll actually do conversation. We'll practice it, which of course you've been doing your whole life, and yet maybe today might feel a little bit different. So we'll do 2 small rounds of small group conversation, approximately 15 minutes each. And then just like it is right now, we'll come back to this, what we call main room, and we can all have a big group conversation with the remaining time at the end, probably 5 or 10 minutes, something like that. So that's the idea. So if you want to make sure your audio and video are available for you in the bottom left-hand corner of your phone or your screen, you can start looking at that, and we'll turn it on in, looks like about 13 minutes. So conversational leadership. If we're going to talk about conversational leadership, just like with knowledge management, we like to talk about what is knowledge, what is management, and what do they mean together, and how difficult that is to define and put words to it. Let's do the exact same thing with conversational leadership, and it's going to be just as difficult as knowledge management. So conversation seems easy, right? So what is conversation? I don't want to teach you to suck eggs, I think is the language we use. But here it is straight out of the dictionary, at least the Merriam-Webster dictionary: an oral exchange of sentiments, observations, opinions, or ideas, and an instance of such exchange, and or an informal discussion, and this made me smile a little bit, of an issue, as opposed to anything else, by representatives of government or institutions. And then they save themselves by the end saying, or groups. But it's funny that they called out governments and institutions in the dictionary. And then I was taught in grammar school that you can't define a word by using the word in the definition, but there it is. a conversation is an exchange similar to a conversation. So I think even the dictionary is struggling a bit to describe or define what is conversation. The point I think I might try to make with this is I think conversation has an undertone to it, an expectation, an assumption maybe, that it's between two people and it's in real time. It's live, it's in person. I'm going to talk to you for a few minutes and that was a conversation. I'd like to challenge that definition just a little bit and put these words in front of you and see if this resonates or makes sense. I don't think it's perfect or done, but it is quite different. What if the definition of conversation were an interaction of senses across time and space? I don't even know if that makes sense, but it's the best words I've got at this point, or those of us sort of practicing and looking at conversational leadership might be considering this. What it's trying to say is it possible, I've got this beautiful painting in front of me that unfortunately I can't easily share with you. Maybe it's a bit of a stretch, but part of me would say I can have a conversation with that painting. And it wouldn't just be me talking to myself. There would be something about, there's something happening in the painting, there's something happening for me. And yes, the painter may or may not still be alive, but it's a bit of a conversation with the painter. Some would say you can have a conversation with a piece of music. You can have a conversation with a book, right? Maybe it's not just two people that you have a conversation with. Maybe it's something else. And maybe it's not just in real time. Maybe there are conversations happening online over long periods of time where there's a comment today and a comment tomorrow and a comment a month later, and it is still an ongoing conversation. So we're basically trying to challenge or rethink or maybe just gain clarity on what do we mean by conversation. So if it's conversational leadership and we're challenging conversation, are we also going to challenge leadership? Maybe. So in this slide, which I believe is my final slide, is a framework for conversational leadership. And you've got two columns here. The left column is a much wider column that's talking about conversation and that quick definition I just offered. And the skinnier right column is the leadership column. And they are sized that way somewhat purposefully. Leadership has been talked about quite a bit for quite some time. In fact, I just, right before this chat, I went on and did a Google Trends search for conversational leadership as a phrase, which had 0 results. It said there aren't enough data points to give you a Google Trend at this point. So that's how new conversational leadership is, according to Google Trends. Whereas I searched for leadership, and as you can imagine, millions and millions of hits. And it had a really, really popular for a while, died off for a while, and now it's come back up. Leadership seems to be popular again recently. So if I'm going to challenge the conversation a little bit, or definition of conversation, what I might offer about leadership is there's an assumption that leadership could be one way. It could be me leading you or someone leading someone else. I know we talk about followership, and you're not a leader if you don't have followers. The challenge that conversational leadership will put towards leadership as a phrase or a thought or notion is this Henry Mintzberg term of communityship, which is just trying to say, maybe as opposed to an individual leading others, which I know is not everything about leadership, but let's actually shift the word and talk about communityship, which is a group of people leading or maybe just being with each other. Entire books and notions on what is leadership and what is communityship. So this framework is meant to say conversational leadership are these two challenges. What is conversation? What is leadership or communityship? And what happens when you bring them together? Can we somehow bring a more vulnerable, a more open, a more conversational self to every conversation that we're a part of, every decision we make, everything we're sort of involved in our daily lives? So those are the two columns. Let me flesh out the left column a bit more. In conversational leadership, we talk about current need, and it seems so obvious that you might know what your current need is, and yet those that practice mindfulness or meditation or yoga or some somatics with working with your body, it actually can be quite a bit of work to have awareness of your needs. It may not be as superficial and as simple as, oh, I need a drink of water, or, oh, I need to get to the office, I need to get on the train. Maybe there's a deeper need that's more of a subconscious need. Conversational leadership is interested in that. What is your list of current needs, and are you in a psychologically safe space with yourself and with the group you're part of to share your true current needs? That's the beginning of conversational leadership. For those in knowledge management, I would compare it to, we often talk about in knowledge management, we don't just share knowledge and optimize the flow of knowledge for fun or just for the challenge of it. We do it for an organizational need or some kind of purpose for the flow of knowledge. We're basically trying to say the same thing here in conversational leadership. What is your need that you have, and how does conversation support that need? Then there's a middle area, and apologies, it does get to be quite a bit here, but I'm hoping it's a seed for you. There's two parts to this middle. There's conversational theories and models, and there's conversational sets, for lack of a better word. So I'll describe the sets in a moment, but first I'll start with conversational theories and models. You may have heard of books. It's probably the easiest place to start with conversational theories and models. Books like Crucial Conversations is quite popular. Nonviolent Communications, I'm hearing more and more about. NVC, I think, is the acronym they often use there. Clean Language is somewhat popular. That's a book and a model and a theory. Courageous Conversations, Healing Conversations, so many other, Getting to Yes, or like influencing and negotiation type books. To me, all of these books come with their own model and their own theory, and they're all quite close to, or maybe building on, something that we might be able to label as conversational leadership. So those are a few examples of theories and models. What about on this right side, conversational sets? In knowledge management, we talk about mindset, skill set, tool set sometimes. Project management talks about that. Lots of fields talk about what is the mindset, the skill set, and the tool set I need to have to be capable or to be practiced, or maybe we'd say have some expertise in this field. So absolutely, there's some kind of mindset that we bring to conversation. What will be some examples of mindset? Am I in the mood for group conversation? Am I in the mood for individual conversation? Am I in the mood for a high-level, big thinking conversation? Am I more interested in a detailed conversation? What's the mindset I'm bringing to this conversation? In fact, there's a whole book on mindset as well that talks about a growth mindset versus a sort of static mindset you may have seen. Skill set and tool set, there are also many examples we bring to what is my skill in conversation and what are the tools I bring to conversation. Entire dozens and dozens of skill sets and tool sets we have. We also, though, want to take it even broader and talk about John Hagel has written some articles on this thing that he's calling spirit set and heart set. What he means by that is it's something broader, maybe something deeper than mindset, skill set, tool set. What is the spirit that I'm bringing to the conversation? I might take a bit of a risk and say baggage. What am I bringing to this conversation that is something deeper, is something more long-standing, positive or negative or indifferent? What is the spirit I'm bringing to it? And then the heart set, purposefully separating heart set from mindset. I think mindset often gets confused with, brain and mind. What is it that I'm thinking in mindset? Whereas heart set is specifically trying to call out what are the feelings I'm bringing. Do I feel angry, irritated, sad, frustrated, happy, joyful? What is sort of going on in my heart and in my feeling type body as I come into whatever the conversation is that we're approaching? And then the final set here on this model, and then I'll bring it all together with some loops, is the current conversation. So everything I've talked about so far is a bit abstract, a bit theoretical, a bit long-term. The current conversation, though, is what am I actually talking about in this moment right now? So there's what, 20 or 30, 40 of us on the call right now. I'm offering a few words, and we're about to split into smaller groups and have a conversation. I'm offering you thoughts right now. This is our current conversation. What might you add to that when we go into our breakouts? How are you going to talk about conversation? So that final green box there is applied conversational skills. Given all the theories, all the models, all the heart set, mindset, everything I'm bringing in, what words, what intentional, purposeful words am I choosing in this conversation right now? For example, am I unintentionally saying something against a religion? Am I unintentionally saying something against a color or a race or a nationality? Those would be some examples of the applied conversational skills I'm using. Or another example, am I in the middle of a negotiation and I'm not using negotiation tools? I'm using relationship building tools, and maybe it's not a good fit for the negotiation type conversation. So this whole field of conversation is to basically shine a light on, are we able to see conversations and lead them in the best way possible to address, frankly, all the divisiveness and struggles that we seem to be seeing all around the world today? The loop I want to offer is both a personal improvement and impact on the left side, and then on the right side, a shared impact and improvement. So what I mean by those are, in your conversations that you're a part of, it's having some kind of impact on you individually as a person. Are you aware of, in all of the words that you choose and how they land, or the conversations you have with other people, are you aware of the impact you're having on yourself in those conversations? And are you in that growth mindset where you're always improving? What are the words I'm using? What is my intent for the words I'm using? There's my timer, so I'm right on time. Are you aware of the impact and your own learning? And then on the right side, the loop there is, in this current conversation, as I'm applying these conversational skills, am I aware of the impact on others? Am I using active listening? Am I mirroring back when someone else asks a question or gives me a comment? Am I saying, how did that land with you? What's going on for you? Are we really making contact, as I opened with? Is there connection and contact in this conversation? And the continuous improvement that we can not only make as individuals, but also as a group. So before I break us into groups, I know that was a lot. Apologies, it was quite quick, but it was meant to be a bit of a planting of a seed to now just get into conversation about conversation. So the question for you is, what is evoked in you by the concept of conversational leadership? That's the question I'll leave you with for the breakout groups. There's a little bit of technology I want to offer you here in case this is your first time ever using Zoom. In the lower left-hand corner, you should see of your phone or whatever you're connected in through, there should be start video, and there should be connect audio and or mute or unmute. So I will ask all of you when we go into breakout rooms to turn on your camera and your microphone. But if you're in a space where you can't talk or you don't want to talk, when you go into the breakout rooms, you can also use chat. We are recording this call, but I want to give you a heads up so you've got a little bit more psychological safety. Only this main room is recorded. When I send you off into the breakout rooms are not recorded unless someone in the breakout room chooses to record, but I don't think anybody will. So it's only in the main room, so you've got a little more of a private conversation going on in your breakout. When you get into the breakout, it is helpful to, again, do connection before content. So maybe at least say your name and where you are today, just to introduce yourself to get started, and then dive into conversation about what do you think? What's evoked in you by the concept of conversational leadership?
That's where they were sort of wondering, that's what they would like to know.
I'm writing all these down. They're great. I just closed the room, so people will start joining us now over the next 27 seconds.
Oh, cool.
And then and then they'll all be back here. And Nancy, looking at the clock, it looks like we'll probably just do like 2 or 3 minutes, maybe, just a really quick group conversation.
While people are coming back in, let me share that slide on further resources, if you don't mind, John.
Sure.
Just as so if people jump out of the conversation now.
2 seconds, 1 second. Okay, now everybody should be back. So yeah, while you're bringing that up, I'll just remind everybody of the process here. So we're now all back together as a full group. Apologies for any technology issues, or if you had the same people in your breakout. Hopefully it was a decent little conversation. And I also want to apologize that I noticed in this moment, I'm sort of beating myself up a little bit. I think I'm not sure that was the cleanest description of conversational leadership, so I apologize for that, and yet I hope it planted a bit of a seed. So what we do now in the process is we've got 5 minutes left, and Nancy has a bit of a closing slide and comment for us. But before we get to that, it's wide open, so anybody can turn on their video or their unmute themselves and frankly continue that same conversation. What is evoked for you by this concept of conversational leadership? Who'd like to offer first?
So we were just saying that how do we make it happen? Because when we work in a very task focused organization, very led, not given space to even have a conversation, we appreciate all the things he said, but we need some more steps on how to make it happen, which is why I sort of got the resources up there in the chat. So I invite everyone to share in the conversation over audio, but also if you're more comfortable on the chat, join the conversation on the chat as well. Who'd like to go next?
I was going to add to what this. Me and Nancy went to an event last week, and the space that we're in actually allows you to have a conversation. So I don't know if a lot of organisations, that the environment that people are in actually stops people having a conversation, so that there is no actual leadership of the conversation. And I mentioned in my little chats that quite often so-called leaders, people at the top, are probably from industries where they don't really have conversations that often. Maybe they're from a financial background rather than more people focused. I'm not saying that all finance people don't talk to each other, just saying that that's what it feels like, from my opinion, when I've met leaders, that they're focused more on the figures rather than having the conversations to lead the organisation or lead the people around them.
Yeah, that's interesting. Considering my organisation and what I do.
Yeah, you talk about Vincent, so you're okay.
Yeah, really. Yeah, but also in the office, I genuinely go into the office to have conversations. Right? As your business grows and you concentrate on different things. Right? Obviously, I'm not necessarily managing communities on a day-to-day basis anymore. So I genuinely just go in to sit in the office and have conversations with various different people in the office, just to stimulate that, just to get other people to talk as well and ask questions.
Nice.
Yeah, we were saying I'm doing knowledge management for a global IT for a corporate, and we were saying just in the last breakout that IT can actually be kind of breaking the conversations and stopping the conversations, and I don't disagree with that, even though I am an IT person, because well, from my experience, we've gone from being like local supported IT to a global team, and now we're geographically dispersed. So we don't all necessarily sit in the same room. I mean, for example, that you can see people behind me on this video, but they're a separate team to me. My team are actually dotted around the world in Kuala Lumpur and Delaware Valley, and I never see them. We do have team meetings, but you find as well, because of time differences, that where you would normally like to have a conversation face to face for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, just to ask a few questions, sort something out, you find that it just can drag out over lots of hours or lots of days, because you you don't actually manage to get hold of that person even on Skype. You know, they might not be available, and so you end up reverting to email and then having to wait. So the technology, which on the one hand can speed certain aspects of work up, might actually slow things down, and a conversation would have been faster.
Yeah, pick up the phone.
Yeah. So, well, our phone calls go through Skype as well, you see. So if if the person doesn't answer or they're not there, yeah, it can be a bit strange. But one of the things that I was just saying in the last breakout that I'll take away from this is I hadn't really thought about this type of call like we're on now, or a Skype call, as I'd thought of it as a call rather than a conversation, and now I'm going to think of it more as a conversation, and I'm going to start switching my webcam on when I ring somebody. And even if nobody else ever switches their webcam on, I'm going to try and switch mine on all the time now, so that they see me face to face.
Makes such a difference. Well done.
Yeah, I think it will make a big difference. Actually, I think people might think it's weird at first, but what the heck? I'll give it a persevere with it.
Yeah, we've really changed as well. Like I think it's kind of like changed in the last couple of years, really. But previously, often we had Google Hangouts or WebEx or any of those. And often that people still had their cameras off, but we started turning them on all the time, and then automatically people start turning on their web cameras as well.
Right. Yeah. So I can try and get some momentum behind that then. Yeah.
And one thing that you could think about as well is actually depending on what we did when we were having team in different locations in the world. We found an hour was right for everyone, so for some of them it would be in the morning, for others it'd be later in the afternoon or evening, and that was just an hour. You just do normal work, no meetings were allowed to be planned in, but you're all sitting in a Google Hangout or Skype with cameras on. So you just do the normal work, and if a conversation happens to happen, right, you can just quickly ask someone something, but you're basically doing your own work for an hour, but with webcams on.
Right. Yeah, good idea.
I might add one quick tool set, because I kind of hear it here in the conversation, is we get so tied up in conversation about the task. Go do this, what's the status of this? Let's talk about task. In our partner field of organization development, they talk about group task and group maintenance, and I find that to be a really powerful framing for group task is what are we getting done? Group maintenance is how are we getting it done? Am I angry with you? Am I sad with you? Are you triggering me? And I don't know what the numbers are, but my hunch has always been it's like 99% of our time is on group task and maybe 1% is on group maintenance. And that 1%, sadly, is often quite angry and not healthy, even though it's important. If the balance were different, where we're talking about what's to get done and how can we work together on it. Do we need to be angry? Do we need to be happy? Do we need to have a knowledge cafe structure? Do we need to be in person? All the sort of how conversation, I don't know, I find is opportunity for improvement maybe.
Right, we're out of time, so I'm going to take over there.
All yours.
Because one thing we do strive for in our little group is to work to time. So, but what I'm hearing is how much more conversations could be happening, and I encourage all of you to sort of reach out to people that you've met and maybe continue those that conversation. So we will share the slides with you and the recording, but I've got a poll up there now just to find out what you felt about today's breakout sessions. Who are you going to try it with next? Are you and should we run this in more future webinars with the Knowledge and Community Network? We're going to send you the slides and the recording later, and in there's some links to resources which I've flashed up on the screen. So this week is the ARC KM Summit, so if you want to hear what's going on there and you're not there, then follow the hashtag. Michael Norton will be presenting there, so do go and support him. We have more resources from John and David on David's website, so you can look follow the links there, and there's lots more on APQC as well. So I'm sorry to have taken over there, John, and not let you finish your conversation. But I want to thank you for sharing with us this. I think you've evoked a lot of, and inspired a lot of people to think differently about conversation. It looks like the majority have found it helpful, or incredibly helpful. They're going to start with their teams first, the majority, and yes, they want to experience this more. So that is a fantastic result for me. Thank you so much, John, for sharing and facilitating this. Final words from yourself before we close?
A big thank you, and I'll reflect, and if we ever do this again, it'll be noticeably better, so thank you.
No, I think it was awesome. Thank you everyone for participating and being up for it, and yeah, all feedback and insights welcome. We do we continually evolve as in that growth mindset, so thank you everyone for helping us do that. Thank you, John. Thank you, Michael. Thank you all, and see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.